Hello, everyone. I'm Danielle Passwaters, Gallery Manager and Curator for the UWM Union Art Gallery, and I'll be your host and MC tonight. We are super excited to be able to host this Story Slam event, highlighting stories from Milwaukee community members on themes surrounding home, belonging, and democracy. This program is supplementary to our current exhibition, Here to Stay, Braving Barriers Through Performance. I hope everyone has had a chance to check out the virtual exhibition on our website, but if not, make sure to hop on over there afterwards and play around in that virtual space. We will email a link to the virtual exhibition in a follow-up email after the programming. The show ends tomorrow though, so make sure to check it out before the link becomes inactive. The Union Art Gallery's mission as an art space is dedicated to the exhibition of diverse contemporary art. We present a broad range of visual art by exhibiting work in all mediums by local, regional, and national emerging and established artists. In addition, the Union Art Gallery prides itself on being an accessible space for UWM student artists to exhibit and learn. It is our goal to reflect the diversity of the university and greater Milwaukee communities and to connect the university and the public through relevant art and cultural programs. We support student, emerging, and established artists by providing opportunities for the creation and exhibition of cutting-edge visual art. And finally, the Union Art Gallery and UWM student involvement at large supports Black Lives Matter. Please visit our hashtag Black Lives Matter resource page for access to resources designed primarily for white and non-Black allies to educate oneself on issues of racism and oppression. This link will also be provided in the follow-up email. We present the following programming in collaboration with ExFabula as their mission aligns seamlessly with our own. They aim to connect Milwaukee through real stories by creating brave spaces for storytelling on stage and off. Additionally, they do not condone racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, classism, xenophobia, or general hatefulness in any way. The Union Art Gallery and ExFabula want to stay connected with you. Please follow us on all the social media platforms and tag us in your posts using @Union Art Gallery, hashtag Union Art Gallery, @ExFabula, and hashtag ExFabula. Also, if any of your friends or family are unable to attend today, a recording of the program will be available on our Instagram and Facebook accounts and our website, so make sure to share those links once available. Okay, a little housekeeping. Please mute your microphones and silence your cell phones. We do want to hear from you though during the event. So it has been a long and isolated past few months and virtual programming is oftentimes so dry. So let's connect. You can leave questions and comments in the chat box and also feel free to share your own ultra shorts. Don't be afraid to reach out to each other and give shout outs and hellos throughout the program in the chat box. If we have time for questions, we will try our best to get to them. If you do choose to participate in an ultra short, please know that all stories should be true and personal stories. You should type your ultra short in the chat and then we will read these throughout the show. They should be able to be read in 60 seconds or less. And if you would like your name to remain anonymous, please just type anon in the box with your story. Our three tellers tonight have worked really hard to craft their stories as engaging, moving, and true stories aimed at being presented in roughly 5 to 9 minutes. This is a reminder to our storytellers to watch for messages from the timekeeper, who will give you your signals at the halfway mark, the 1 minute mark, and then finally when time is up. Well, let's get to it then. Please join me in welcoming our first teller of the evening, UWM undergraduate student in design and visual communications, Lauren Robertson.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you so much for having me here. Here I go. So when I was growing up, I had the most beautiful dog. She was a mutt. She was a Vizsla lab mix. She had gorgeous reddish fur and was slim and graceful. When she'd lay down, she'd cross her legs, and she had the cutest little diamond right above her forehead. Um, and she was perfect. She was everything you could want in a dog. I could tell who she was out of any dog. I knew the sound of the jingle of her collar, her footsteps on the floor, her tail wagging from a billion tails. I'd just know her from anywhere. She was amazing. She was the perfect mutt. When I was in high school, though, I was friends with a group of people, and we would always like to talk in between our lunch period and our study hall. It was a great time for us to kind of get along and get to know each other and hear what each other was thinking about the day. Uh, we had a new member to our group. His name was James. He was super funny, super fun. Just loved being around him. He was a perfect addition to our group. We thought he was amazing. I thought he was the funniest person. As him and I, my other friend, were walking around the halls trying to pass the time, my friend looked at us and said, "You two should date." I looked at him out of the corner of my eye, unsure what to say. I was so nervous. I was thinking, oh, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. What's he going to say? And he said, "I don't date mutts." Yeah. um, I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my friend and I scurried down the hall because the bell had luckily rang and I was free, but not emotionally free, just physically, because I then spent the next 7 days in utter turmoil, my stomach constantly in knots, always looking around the cafeteria to see if he was coming, seeing if I'd have to deal with what just happened, just overall petrified to come to school. When I talked to my friends about it, they said he was just joking, just let it go. It's not that big of a deal. And it was a big deal to me. It's not just a joke. It wasn't just funny. It's something that has continued to affect me for years. I even wrote my college essay on it because it was such a disturbing moment in my life. This unfortunately wasn't the only instance of school place racism. During my first week of school back in high school again, I had a teacher ask for everyone's name. I told her my name is Lauren, and she said, "Really? I thought you'd have a more exotic name." I sat in my chair, tense, wanting to say something, but knowing that she was the authority. I couldn't mouth off. I couldn't, who's her superior? Who can I tell? I had to sit there. And I gave her a chance to back out of it. I said, "What kind of name do you think I should have? Or what name would you suggest?" And she said, "I don't know, Renee," which isn't even an exotic name. My name is Lauren, Lauren. It is the name given to me. It is the name I like. It is the name that will always be mine. And this isn't the only instance where somebody thought I should have a different name. During my first week of college, I met my roommate's friend from her hometown. And she said, "Wow, you speak really well." And I thought, of course I speak really well. I'm at a higher education level right now. I graduated with honors from my high school. I'm overall a top student, and I don't really think there's such thing as speaking poorly. Um, I kind of just rolled my eyes and was like, whatever. And then she also said, "Lauren's kind of a boring name for you. You should have something more exotic." And again, I was recalled back to this high school experience and thought to myself, oh my God, not again. What name do these people want me to have? And I just ignored it. I later would talk to my roommate and say, "Hey, did you notice this? This is kind of weird. I didn't really feel comfortable when she said that about me." And she said, "Oh yeah, she says stuff like that all the time. I kind of just so used to it that I just ignore it." And I was left once again to deal with this stuff by myself. Um, Unfortunately, school isn't the only place this stuff happens to me. I like to wear head wraps to work a lot. I think they're really elegant and beautiful and are a great part of Black culture. And I had one of my coworkers come up to me and say that I looked like a mammy, which, for those of you who don't know, is a stereotypical um, house slave, to say the least, which is not me at all. I am not a stereotype created by white people to sell pancakes. Um, I honestly don't know why they would say that. And during the pandemic, I have also worked at a restaurant in order to, make ends meet during this difficult time. I am one of three mixed race women there, and it has been amazing working with them. They never made me feel more at home and more like I know people. And I honestly, and we look nothing alike. That's the amazing thing. The only thing we share is that we have tan skin. Unfortunately, one of my coworkers can't tell us apart. I was standing next to my coworker at one of our kiosks, going over tables and talking about our days since we only get to see each other every once in a while. While I was talking to her, my white coworker came up to us and said to me, "Louise, can you close out the check for table 6?" I looked at her. I don't have table 6, waiting for her to register that my name is Lauren and not Louise, thinking maybe I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she meant to say Lauren and accidentally said Louise. Our names both start with an L. And again, she says, "I know it's not your table. It's my table right now. But Louise, can you cancel out the check?" I said, "Table 6 isn't mine, and I'm not Louise." She said, "Oh my God, sorry," and just ran off. I look at my other mixed race coworker and say, "This happens to me every shift. She cannot get my name right. She either thinks I'm Olivia, who has gorgeous long hair, which, as you can see, I have very short hair, or she thinks I'm Louise, who always wears her hair up in a bun, which I can't do with my hair." And it has always been frustrating for me. It wasn't I, until this year actually, that I processed all of these things that happened to me. Uh, Someone created an Instagram for my school district in high school that said, "Share your story, share how you feel about what's going on in your life." And I did. And it was liberating to say, "Hey, this happened to me. It sucked. I wish the school had someone that I could have talked to, someone that could have taught me how to deal with this instead of telling me to just figure it out by myself." And I read everyone's responses and realized we weren't alone the entire time. We were all suffering together. We just didn't know it. And it liberated me. I felt like all of a sudden I had this family of people who knew exactly what I'd been going to this entire time. And it made me feel original, not just a mutt, not just a mixed race person, that I am born, that I am originally me. I am beautiful. I am everything that I need to be. I have never been anybody else. I've always been me. And as Danielle stated before, I am a design student, and this has heavily influenced my art. My experiences in the Black and white community have allowed me to create art that translates beyond both sides. One day I can be making a piece about police brutality, and the next day I can be making a drawing of Neil Diamond. It's honestly the most beautiful experience. It's great to know that I can be both things. I can love both parts of me. It has also influenced my senior project, which is all about connecting and sharing stories. I want to create a community where everyone sees each other as an individual. We are all experiencing different and difficult things, especially right now during the pandemic. And I believe it's time to desegregate, time to open up with our neighbors, tell them what is happening in our communities, tell them I'm struggling. And it's time that we go beyond just being a bunch of mutts. Time to just explore our world, explore each other, explore what makes us beautiful. And I really hope that my zine project will do that. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Lauren. That was really powerful, and I'm so sorry that those things have happened to you. Thank you for being so brave and sharing all of that with us. Now Michaela is going to read off some ultra shorts from you all.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I want to send all my love to Lauren. I was, my hand was twitching the whole time. I'll be ready to slap people. So I literally am sending you all the love I have in my heart because I resonate with that story tremendously. So I'm going to read 3 author shorts. 2. One is from an anonymous teller. So the first comes from Marco. It says, when Obama first ran for president, I really, really wanted to vote. I couldn't. I wasn't an American yet. I became an American just a few months ago. The American dream is now supposedly within my grasp. Yet it seems like it could just as easily turn my American nightmare. I will vote. The next ultra short comes from Rick. It says, we keep talking about America being the land of cultural diversity. My dream is that we get to the point where legal forms do not need to ask your nationality. And the last ultra short I'm going to read for right now is from an anonymous teller. It says, we lived in Bayview since the 1980s and always loved the Estes house. We had an opportunity to buy it in 1989. We are the 3rd family to live there since it was built in 1875-ish. Awesome. And if you have any ultra shorts, feel free to private message me and I'll add them to the list. Thanks.
Okay, our second story tonight is presented by local Milwaukee union organizer and freelance writer and Brown Beret, Juan Miguel Martinez.
Hello. Thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you very much, Lauren, for your story. That was very powerful and moving as well. Very good to hear. So I'll just jump into my story. Well, basically, what I'm going to be telling the story of is my trajectory kind of as a person that never really belonged in neither American nor Mexican culture. And it's preceded by my mother. My mother was born in 1963 in a town called León, Guanajuato in Mexico. Before that, my grandfather, Juan Ignacio Hernandez, had come up to California, and he'd come to Texas, and he'd come to Florida looking for a place to kind of flourish. He never really knew where to go. So one day he went north of Chicago to a town called Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Milwaukee, Wisconsin was really flourishing as an industrial town in that time. Because of that, my family's roots are very deeply sewn into what is now Walker's Point. Walker's Point at that time was kind of just a empty little neighborhood, but it was lined with all kinds of factories over here to the left. He got together with a man named Juan Saavedra, who was also a immigrant from León, Guanajuato. And together they met up with a man named Ernesto, who was looking to start something, a little bit of a home away from home for everybody in the form of a grocery store called El Rey. So when they formed El Rey, Ernesto wanted to set himself apart. So what he did is he created a tortilla factory under the bridge on 9th and Pierce. My grandpa and Juan Saavedra ran that tortilla factory for Ernesto. And in fact, when you buy tortillas from El Rey now, you're buying my grandpa's final recipe. He's the one that added the amount of lime that was needed in order for them not to be too hard and for them to be preserved long enough. So what he started doing while running that tortilla factory, he bought a house on the corner of 4th and Washington, which now looks like something that you would see like in a New York movie. It's a giant brownstone. And he brought my grandma, and he brought my mother up here. And what would happen is that he would buy houses that were falling apart. He would move his family into them. He would fix them up while living in them, and then he would sell them for double the value. And hence, a lot of the houses in Walker's Point became very pretty houses. And whenever he would like sell enough, whenever he would sell a house, he would get that money and he would move back to Mexico because he didn't want his daughters and his son assimilating too much into American culture. He wanted them to retain their Mexicanness. That's something. And it's really funny because my mother would come here. She told me how much she loved the Rolling Stones, and then she would go to Mexico and she would be into Camilo Sesto and all the Spanish singers of the time. And that kind of cross paths with me. And that was kind of the way I always was. I always loved both. And I always went back and forth as a child. With summers with my mother and father, we would drive to Mexico. My father came here around 1973 when my grandfather had bought that house and was currently living in the one on the corner of 4th and Washington. And it was really funny, and it was kind of jarring for my grandpa to rent to two people who had just crossed the border, who was my dad and mi tia Chayo, and they had crossed the border wearing a tuxedo. My dad was wearing a tuxedo and a full-on like something you would wear to the Oscars, and then my tia Chayo was wearing like a ball gown that you would wear to the prom. See, my dad and his brothers and sisters were so country. They thought that when they crossed the border, they would immediately be in like a city that was like full of civilization. So they thought it would be best to wear a tuxedo when they crossed the border and a ball gown. When they got to the border, the coyote, the guy that crossed them through the river, told them, "You guys need to change, and because you guys are going to get your clothes all wet." My dad said him and his they took their clothes off. My dad and his sister, they changed it to something else, and then they put their tuxedo and their ball gown, and then they crossed the river. They said the water came up to about chest height, and they got on the bus, and they were set to go up to Milwaukee to meet with mi tío Chuy. Mi tío Chuy is the one that had them all coming here. He's the one that was my dad's brother, and he was telling them that Milwaukee's a city of industry. There's a lot of work up here. You guys all need to start like coming up here and getting work. And my dad was about the third one, him and me, because they always traveled in pairs. It was my dad and his sister, and it would always be like an uncle and an aunt together. It would always be man and woman, so the man could protect the woman. Not the coyotes wouldn't take advantage. So my dad said he got on the bus and he was getting up there, and he didn't realize there was a San Antonio checkpoint in Texas, in San Antonio. And then my dad didn't know what to do. And he said, "Well, we already put our tuxedo back on and you got your ball gown on. We look professional." So when the guy comes on, when the INS agent gets on here on the bus, just put up a newspaper, pretend you're reading, look busy, and he won't look over at us. And the guy got on, and my dad said he did it, and he looked around, and he said there were about 15 newspapers up. Everybody had the same idea to just put their newspaper up and kind of see kind of not let it to look busy. Lucky for them, nothing happened to them, so they were able to still come, and they got here to Milwaukee, and they got here with and mi tío Chuy is the one that picked them up from the bus station. And this is the story here about how my dad never wanted us to assimilate. Growing up as kids, he forbade that we spoke English in the house. He never wanted us to speak English. He never wanted us to, he would get disgusted if he heard us listening to like any kind of music that wasn't Mexican music. And what happened when mi tío Chuy picked them up from the bus station, he said to them, he said, "Are you guys hungry?" And my dad said, "Yeah, I've never been hungrier in my life." And then my dad and my uncle told me, he's like, I'm about to take you to get the best meal you ever had in your life. And he took him to McDonald's and he got him 5 Filet-O-Fish. And my dad took a bite and my tío Chuy said, "It's good, right?" And my dad said, "This is the most disgusting thing I've ever had." And my uncle told me, he's like, "Well, that's because you're trashy and you have no class." And he snatched the 5 Filet-O-Fish from him and he ate all 5 Filet-O-Fish in the truck before they even got to the house. But now when it's Lent, my dad still observes Lent. He's still very Catholic. You'll find 5 Filet-O-Fish always stacked in his refrigerator around Lent time. So that really shows like the trajectory of how my parents were, because right after high school, I left high school and I worked in a meatpacking plant to gather up money and moved to Mexico. So I moved to Mexico for about 4 years, and there they all called me gringo, and up here everybody called me Mexican. So I never really felt like I belonged in any culture, really. I always identified with the word Chicano, because Chicano is where I'm basically grew up with Mexican customs, but I have a very kind of American like kind of tastes, like the ability to, like I have access to like a lot more like stuff. And like in Mexico is where I actually found like a lot of different things, and where I really got my identity is where I'm kind of an amalgamation of a lot of different things. I'm sort of a patchwork of many different cultures, kind of the way I didn't have the luxury the way my dad did to be like, he's going to be Mexican. That's his identity forever. And that's the way he was born. And that's the way he's going to be. So me, I was able to always bring it back and just kind of be all together, not assimilated, but a bunch of different cultures in one. So I think,
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're actually gonna put a poll out for you guys. So if everybody would take a second to answer a couple of questions, that would be really great. That probably took me longer than some of you, sorry.
No worries. Just give it another couple seconds and then I will share the responses. Welcome newbies, and thanks for being with us, whether it's one of you or the party of 5 or more.
Okay, thank you guys for taking the time to fill out the poll. Now I'm gonna turn it back over to Michaela to present some more of your guys' Ultra Shorts.
Hi, everybody. Please feel free to keep sending Ultra Shorts my way. I love reading them. So I'll read 4 more. The first is from Sandy. It says, Fishnets, Frank and Forder, the floor show. All of us freaks at midnight movies, shouting in unison in the dark at Rocky Horror Picture Show. A formative time in my teen years, a weekly ritual where I belonged, a fellow freak. Period, Sandy. Okay, this next one comes from Nikki. It says, my first taste of the nitty gritty was when birthday candles burned down my family's home in the 6th grade. We lost everything. The night after the fire, we didn't even have toothbrushes, but my mom, dad, and brother shared a hotel bed, cried, held each other, and reminisced. I knew then it didn't matter. We had lost all of our personal belongings. The next one comes from Eddie. It says, roller derby finally made me feel like I truly belong. None of us are from the same walks of life, but we're all so close-knit over our mutual love of rolling around and slamming into each other. It made me realize we can still be united, even if nothing else is the same. Everyone belongs. And then the last ultra short for right now comes from Liza. It says, having worked in child welfare, I had several Black children who were adopted by white foster parents. I had mixed feelings about this. Would they be taught about their heritage? Would they grow up feeling a sense of belonging? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone who's submitting tonight. Okay, our final speaker of the evening is UWM MFA student in the Department of Art and Design, Steph Wetter.
Hi, thank you for the introduction. I'm Steph Wetter. I'm a painter, drawer, digital artist, and musician. I think that really sums up everything that I am. So I'm gonna get started with the story. So back in 1997, my older sister is 4 years old at the time, and she approaches my mother saying that an angel had come by with a little boy and that the little boy was gonna come and live with us. So my mom at the moment said, oh, this is impossible. I've just undergone surgery where I can no longer have children. Having you is a miracle. There's no way another child's gonna come into the home. 3 days later, she gets a call from my birth grandma saying, and my mother knew her through work at a chemical plant, hey, my daughter is pregnant again and we can't keep the kid. We can't raise another kid. So that's how I came into the picture, into my my family. And it never was a question, and it was never hidden from me that I was adopted. It was never a question of whether or not I was loved by my mother, my adoptive mother. But there's always been this push and pull. See, like the rational side of my mind says, hey, I have more opportunities in my life, like going to school and getting an MFA, that I wouldn't have been able to get had my birth parents raised me. That's the rational side of my mind. But I also had this emotional side, you know. My mother, the one person that's supposed to want me, can't and doesn't, but kept my older sister that she had before me. Different sisters. But so this story about the angel coming by with me before I was born and kind of previewing the house like some sort of Child Protective Services Heaven Edition. My mom tells this freely to everybody who comes over to the house. Every person I've dated has heard this story. So it's not a secret, and I don't know really if it's true or not, but I really appreciate the gesture that there's some sort of divine sense as to why I belong in the family. So looking at my notes, so continuing with these narratives of belonging, I was also tongue-tied at birth. Now, normally this is a quick, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with it, but tongue-tied is where the tip of your tongue is attached to the floor of your mouth. Now, normally this is a quick fix, and most times the doctors just grab the baby and do the thing you do with a dog where you're like, what do you got in your mouth, and just kind of check. But that didn't happen for me. So I didn't end up speaking until I was about 4 years old. And my mom always told me, hey, you drew to communicate. That's what was your first way to communicate, is you started drawing. We went to the zoo one time and you drew the entire layout of the zoo in the order that we saw it and the animals that we saw in chronological order. And this made sense to me. Like no one else in my family draws, no one else makes music. So it must be some sort of learned thing that I gained these interests. And so moving forward in time, towards the end of high school, I still have not met my birth parents at all. And again, there's a rational part of my mind that says, hey, you know, my life is better because of my adoption. But the irrational side of my mind that still to this day deals with questions of belonging, questions of self-worth, confidence. And so when I wanted to meet my birth parents, I asked my mom to do it on my behalf, just so I had that shield, that buffer, so that the rejection wouldn't be directed right at me, if that makes sense. And so my mom sent out letters to the addresses. We Googled them up and did some internet sleuthing, found them, and sent out these letters. And my birth father got back to me right away. As quick as I'm assuming letters work. I grew up in an internet age, and I got a letter back with photos and everything. And he came out to visit, and it was a wonderful experience. And getting to know him now, I'm really blessed to have him in my life. And the first time we met, he told me that he is a musician and that he comes up with melodies and strums on his guitar, comes up with songs. And he kind of told me like, hey, that must be where you get music, where you come up with compositions. And he gave me his demo from his band, Mind Eye. It's really cool. It's like psychedelic old school rock. And I think I might be the only person with a digital like burn of the CD. So that's really awesome. Yeah, so it was really touching that kind of brought me in like, hey, this is why you belong with me. You know, you got music through me. And again, there started to be some conflict between my mother's story of why, you know, and his story as to why I belong. And so moving forward in time, so that was the end of high school. Towards the end of my undergraduate degree, about 2 years ago, I finally heard from my mother's side, my birth mother's side of the family. It was my older sister, and she reached out to talk to me. And it turned out she never knew I existed until the letter got sent. And so I still don't fully understand what happened because we've spoken and met, but there's not that candid relation of things quite yet. We're not that close yet. But so from what I understand, there was some sort of big what's the right word, argument, confrontation about me existing. And so she reached out and we've begun talking, and she's really great. And I'm glad that she's part of my life. And so as time rolled on, it's again, getting towards the end of my time as an undergrad, about to get my degree. And she reaches out to me, hey, maybe you should come and meet your grandparents, because your grandpa has lung cancer, stage 4. And so she invites me out to the house, and it's about 9 p.m. I just worked a shift in the gallery department, and I drove it all the way out to Dousman, and I'm sitting in the dark on this street, and it's about 9 p.m. and I still haven't gotten the text message, you know, like the etiquette when you go over to people's houses that they text you to come in and you let them know that you're there, all that. But I wasn't receiving any okay from my sister. And it was 9 p.m. I was sitting in the car for about half an hour, and you know, my nerves are really going through the roof. And I know which house is there, and is theirs, and I'm kind of just looking at it. And eventually, I work up the gumption to go up to the door, and I knock on the screen door, and they didn't know I was coming either. So, you know, I kind of showed up 22 years late, 23 years late. It was pretty remarkable. So yeah, I just showed up out of the blue one night. They were in pajamas, ready to go to bed, and so yeah, they brought me into their home, and right off the bat, I started telling them what I'm into. You know, I draw, I make music, and my grandpa perks up. He's like, "Oh, I draw," and he shows me some paintings that he made, very like calendar-esque, if that makes sense, like barns and then like wildlife. Very Wisconsin. And he also paints what was it? He paints Metallica album covers, but like he extends the art. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, so it's really great. And so he was kind of, you know, telling me like, oh, so this is where you get drawing from for me. And he brought me downstairs into his, I guess his war room, if that makes sense. He was showing me all of his trophies from being a mixed martial artist. I think it's Taekwondo, but I can't remember. And he was telling me about all his championships. There's trophies that are up to my chest, you know, sitting on the ground. And he's telling me about, you know, in his heyday, he runs a dojo that, you know, he was going to go national and then something happened. And so he was kind of giving me this sense of what it meant to be a man in the family and why I belonged in the family. And then he gave me this antidote about how, I can't remember which grade it is, but maybe it was his grandpa. So my great-great-grandpa was a drunken brawler and would get in fist fights in Milwaukee all the time and beat people up. And so I kind of left that. And now looking back at this situation, and he's passed now. He passed in the spring, and I was able to visit him one more time before he passed. So I'm grateful for that. Yeah. So I'm glad I got to meet him that one time. But kind of stepping back and looking at all these stories that I'm told as to why I exist in these situations. My mom's story about why I draw, you know, is in direct competition with the idea that I get drawn from my grandpa, and the idea that I'm brought to my family by an angel, and the idea that my grandpa, it's in my blood, that my grandpa's a drunken brawler, and, you know, my grandpa is, you know, really good at fighting, or he was really good at fighting. These stories kind of conflict with each other and they don't really make sense. And I don't know if they really are true in any extent. And so these stories, again, I don't know if they're true, but they do help rationalize, even though they're not rational themselves and they conflict, they do help rationalize that emotional side of me that still isn't coming to grips with the emotions of being adopted, not being able to be raised by my birth family. And for that, I cherish all the people in my life that have told me these stories as fabricated or true or in between that they are. So, and I appreciate it for that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that very personal story. My son was also tongue-tied when he was born. Not to that severity. They clipped it right away, but okay, well, thank you to all storytellers for your bravery, for coming out here and sharing your stories on this public platform. And I hope everyone who attended was able to take something positive away from all of this. We want to thank ExFabula for coaching the storytellers and for helping us put together this programming event. If you enjoyed tonight's programming, you should know that every Saturday at 1 p.m., ExFabula hosts public workshops, including story starter workshops for folks looking to cover the basics of storytelling, and also story stretch workshops for folks looking for a deeper dive into the craft of storytelling. Also, their next Story Slam event, titled Reimagining Norms, will be held on October 20th at 7 p.m. The event opens at 6:30 p.m. All of these events and more can be found on their website at exfabula.com. We just put another link to a survey in the chat that I hope you all will fill out to help us get to know you and understand how you experienced tonight's programming. Thank you again to ExFabula staff, the Union Art Gallery staff, to the storytellers, and to you all, the audience, for coming out and supporting your community, listening to their diverse experiences, and committing to critical thinking. Thank you.
Let's give a huge round of applause to Danielle for hosting our event tonight. Thank you to each of you for coming out again. Thank you, storytellers, for sharing your amazing stories with us. They're incredible. You're why we're here today. Without your stories, we can't learn, and people can't unpack their bull and do better. So thank you, and 1,000 times thank you. Thank you to UWM and the Union Art Gallery for hosting this event. And thank you to everybody who showed up. Y'all are incredible. Special shout out to Karen for coaching. And if you'd like to find out more, and if you'd like to see the exhibit, please, please, please do visit the Union Art Gallery website. Danielle will drop another link to the exhibit just in case you haven't seen it. So please do check it out. It is incredible. It's a virtual exhibit. It's really, really cool to see. So please do take a look at it. And again, check out exfabula.org if you'd like to be involved with us. We'd love to see your face again. Thank you so much for joining us today. And that does conclude our program. Have a great night. Peace.
Bye. Thank you.